You are now listening to the Yeshua community. When we speak about the Noahide laws, we step into an ancient layer of Jewish thought. The idea that all human beings, regardless of nation or religion, carry a basic ethical responsibility. These laws are not part of the Torah given to Moses, but appear in the Talmud, a later attempt to articulate the minimum morality a society needs in order to remain stable and humane. In their classical form, they read as follows: 1. The prohibition of idolatry. 2. The prohibition of cursing God. 3. The prohibition of murder. 4. The prohibition of theft. 5. The prohibition of sexual immorality, as defined in rabbinic tradition. 6. The prohibition of eating flesh taken from a living animal. 7. The obligation to establish courts and systems of justice. In rabbinic thought, these were understood not as high spiritual ideals, but as the basic threshold a non-Jew had to meet in order to be considered righteous before God. They represented the minimum foundation for living decently in the world, not the fullness of holiness, but the starting point of moral responsibility. In antiquity, several of these laws had a more concrete and immediate meaning than they carry today. The prohibition of idolatry was not only about false belief. It referred to practices seen as spiritually and socially destructive, magical rituals meant to manipulate reality, statues believed to contain divine power, ecstatic cult ceremonies, and in some cultures even child sacrifice. In that world, idolatry was not viewed as a theological error, but as a path into fear, exploitation, and violence. The rabbis believed that any society built on such cults would inevitably unravel. The prohibition against cursing God, Birkat Hashem, also meant something more specific than modern ears might assume. It referred not to everyday frustration or honest questioning, but to a formal, ritualized curse intended to sever one's relationship with the divine and call down misfortune. In the ancient Near East, such formulas existed in several cultures. To the rabbis, this act destroyed a person's dignity and moral bearing. Ordinary cries of pain, doubt, or confusion were never the issue. It was the deliberate ritual renunciation that was considered dangerous. When we hear these laws today, though, there is a distance. Some of them feel intuitive and timeless. Do not take a life, do not steal, build societies on justice. But other laws clearly belong to another age. What does the prohibition of idolatry mean in a world where people may be Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, atheist, or simply searching quietly? Who is this law aimed at now, and what is it trying to protect? And the ancient rabbinic definition of sexual immorality does not always reflect our current understanding of mutuality, dignity, and responsibility. For that reason, many modern Jewish thinkers interpret the Noahide laws on a principle level rather than as literal, binding rules. They become symbols: respect for the sacred, reverence for life, integrity in human relationships, justice as the foundation of society, and compassion as a way of being human. When lifted to this level, they begin to resemble universal moral intuitions, the kind found across many cultures and wisdom traditions. But this raises an important question. How much weight should we place on the Noahide laws today? Are they binding? Are they normative? Or are they primarily historical attempts to describe the minimum ethical threshold for civilized life? And what happens when we place Yeshua, also known as Jesus, into this picture? His ethic is not built on minimum requirements. He does not set the bar where a person can barely step over. He says that the entire Torah rests on love of God and love of one's neighbor. He shifts the focus from external rules to the orientation of the heart. In his teaching, commandments are not boundaries but invitations. Be merciful as God is merciful. Do to others what you would want them to do to you. See the person before you as a human being, not as a means to an end. Seen this way, the Noahide laws remain an ethical foundation from antiquity, not without value, but no longer sufficient. They are an early attempt to articulate something universal, but Yeshua expresses it more clearly, more deeply, and in a way that never grows old. Where the Talmud formulates what is necessary, Yeshua formulates what is good, what creates life between human beings, and what can always be renewed. Thank you for listening. If this reflection resonated with you, consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. May peace surround you, and may kindness guide your path forward.